Hey family, familia, hola mi familia. Welcome back to my channel, Miss Be the Griot. So is today's video is going to be a little bit different than normal. So first, let's just take a deep breath. I'm sure that just like myself, many of you have had a difficult few weeks because our world is at unrest, especially here in the United States, and And so I just wanted to take this time and use this platform to be responsible, responsible as a griot, as a storyteller, as a woman of color, as an African American, as a person in black and brown skin, right? As an educator, as a professor, as a sister, as a daughter, as a mother, all of those titles that I'm wearing currently and that I own um, speak to my current existence, right? And existing and living in this world are two different things. And so many of us have questions. Um, a lot of us we're processing. We're going through this process and it's difficult. And some of us, are too young to understand, and some of us are in the middle, and some of us are adults, and we're miffed because we don't understand, and some of us do have an understanding. Um, and I come to you in freedom. I come to you in love. And I just want to share this is not a lecture. Um, what I did do is I've been talking to some people and, knowing my love of literature and that I teach creative writing and words and books are what I do, right? Um, have said, well, like, what could you suggest? And so I pulled some items from my shelves, um, as you see here. Let me go down. There you go. That I would like to offer to you as just, research, right? Taking the time to experience what the author is bringing to you on the page. Um, I, I'm pretty sure the majority of this is fiction writing, but fiction and classic novels. Okay, so novels that are written by prolific and phenomenal um, writers of African and African American heritage, some even of perhaps Caucasian um, heritage. But what's important is that you experience the story, because isn't it always about the story? We all have a story, everyone has a story. And that's why dialogue and conversation is so important. That's why our stomach should be nauseous over race relations, because if we're not having those conversations, then we are saying to ignorance, I want to stay next to you. I'll just hold on to you. I prefer to be ignorant than um, to have an understanding of something that I don't understand. And that's not what we want. Am I saying that all of these books are going to give you the answer and that you're going to understand the world and everything that's going on right now? Absolutely not. But what I am saying is that knowledge is power. We know that there are power in words, using our words, and I want you to experience these voices. I want you to experience um, the voices of the characters, to explore the narrative, to digest it, and to say, oh, okay, they're writing about this time, or they're writing about this culture, and these experiences. And I promise you, at the end of it, you're going to come out saying, okay, I learned something I didn't know, or that makes a little bit more sense to me. And if not, here's your summer reading list. Here are some really phenomenal books that I personally think should be on everybody's shelf. So let's start because it's been storming off and on. The internet is being shady, and I do not want to get kicked out of this video. All right. So, first up, Themorrow of Tradition. Let me also say that many of these books I experienced when I was doing my graduate studies. Oh my gosh, this is one of them. I'll read the back to you. So it says it's a fictional anatomy of America's harsh betrayal of the promise of racial equality. Doesn't that sound like it's in alignment with what we're experiencing? One of the most significant historical novels in American literature, The Morrow of Tradition, is based on the Wilmington, North Carolina massacre of 1898, called a race riot by the inflammatory Southern press and engineered by white Democrats who had seen their political control slip into the hands of Republicans, many of whom were black. It was, in fact, a coup that restored power to the Democrats by subverting the principles of free democratic election. Some of Charles Chestnut's relatives lived through the violence, and their accounts inspired this powerful and passionate novel. Okay, so we're talking about something based on real facts. This was originally published in 1901, and The Morrow of Tradition presents an unflinching portrayal of America's post Reconstruction descent into a brutal world of segregation and of Black culture caught between ideologies of assimilation and protest. It's almost prophetic, okay? The Morrow of Tradition, numero uno. All right, this is a classic. I know you've seen this probably for the majority of your lives. And if you haven't, oh my goodness. I actually purchased this for my niece over Christmas, and she was so excited. And she said, "Oh, Titi, this was on my list." So this is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Okay. Um, Things Fall Apart is the first of three novels in Chinua Achebe's critically acclaimed African trilogy. So, what does this mean? We need to get two more, right? Okay. It is a classic narrative about Africa's, cataclysmic encounter with Europe as it establishes a colonial presence on the continent. Told through the fictional experiences of Okanwo, a wealthy and fearless Igbo warrior of Umofia in the late 1800s, Things Fall Apart explores one man's futile resistance to the devaluing of his Igbo traditions by British political and religious forces and his despair as his community capitulates to the power of New Order. With more than 20 million copies sold and translated into 57 languages, Things Fall Apart provides one of the most illuminating and permanent monuments to African experience. Akebe does not only capture life in a pre colonial African village, he conveys the tragedy of the loss of that world while broadening our understanding of our contemporary realities. Why is this important? Why do I need to read this? Well, first of all, we don't know our past. How do we know our future? How do we know where we're going? Not only that, but it's important to experience the African diaspora, right? And we want to learn about the motherland and where our roots are grounded. Okay, boom. I know you know Auntie Zora, Zora Neale Hurston. Their eyes are watching God, and look, I got this copy for $1. Many of you have seen the film. This is a classic, so I'm sure that you can get your hands on this probably in the library. I won't read the back of this one. Well, I'll just read you a short glimpse. It says, um, here's one clip. Their Eyes Were Watching God is one of the most poetic works of fiction by a black writer in the first half of the 20th century and one of the most revealing treatments in modern literature of a woman's quest for a satisfying life. This book is so full of deliciousness and it's so layered. Like, I don't even know what else to say. You have to read this book. This is classic. This book is not this particular copy because I think the copy I'm speaking of is currently on my brother Diallo's shelf. But Black Boy by Richard Wright. This is a classic. Black Boy is a classic of American autobiography, a subtly crafted narrative of Richard Wright's journey from innocence to experience in the Jim Crow South, an enduring story of one young man's coming of age during a particular time and place. Black Boy remains a seminal text in our history about what it means to be a man, black and southern in America. Okay? Black Boy. Um, oh, yes. So this is a really super and quick read. Wallace Thurman, The Blacker the Berry. We've heard this for quite some time. Um, I'm not going to repeat what I was just thinking, but I think you've heard it. So, The Blacker the Berry is um, a book that commands that you concentrate on skin color, right? And the beauties in our hues and, the different shades that we come in. It's more complex than that. I don't want to give it away. Um, Let me say this: one of the most widely read and controversial works of the Harlem Renaissance, The Blacker the Berry, was the first novel to openly explore prejudice within the black community. This pioneering novel found a way beyond the bondage of blackness in American life to a new meaning in truth and beauty. Um, so listen to this about the main character. Emily Brown's dark complexion is a source of sorrow and humiliation, not only to herself, but to her lighter skinned family and friends, and to the white community of Boise, Idaho, her hometown. As a young woman, she travels to New York's Harlem, hoping to find a safe haven in the black Mecca of the 1920s. Wallace Thurman recreates this legendary time and place in rich detail, describing Emma's visits to nightclubs and dance halls and house rent parties, and her dreams and her disillusions and the momentous decisions she makes in order to survive. Every adult needs to read that, especially every adult in brown skin, because as I mentioned, we do come in so many different shades, but we have to also understand where the prejudices come, um, and have that conversation of, your skin is lighter than me, so you must be better than me. It traces back into our history. It goes all the way back to slavery, right? And so we can't have the conversation today without having the conversation about the field nigger, the house nigger, what that meant, and and then moving forward hundreds of years later, paper bag tests, like all of these things are relevant. And um, if we just slowly take a little bit out of the pot, a little bit out of the pot, a little bit on the pot, fill our plate, right? We fill our plate and we just eat a little bit at a time. We'll get to have an understanding, and we have to be unafraid to have these conversations. Okay? Strange Fruit. This is so deep. Um, by Lillian Smith, the once banned and best-selling novel about an illicit love affair and race relations in 1920s Georgia. The cover tells you everything. A lot of us have what was once considered strange fruit in our family. I was born in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You know what that means? It means a good portion of my family is Caucasian, right? We have to understand, not so much that I don't see color, because that can be very offensive, especially in this day and time, but how love can conquer all, regardless of that, and you fill in the rest. James Weldon Johnson, The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man. Oh my gosh, you talk about phenomenal. This is one of the most prominent African Americans, novelists of his time. He was a successful lawyer, educator, social reformer, songwriter, and critic. Um, and he was a poet and novelist that achieved lasting fame. Among his most famous works, The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man is in many ways parallel to Johnson's own remarkable life. First published in 1912, the novel relates, through an anonymous narrator, events in the life of an American of mixed ethnicity whose exceptional abilities, ambiguous appearance allow him unusual social mobility from the rural South to the urban North and eventually to Europe. Um, a radical departure from earlier books by Black authors, this pioneering work not only probes the psychological aspects of passing for white, but also examines the American caste and class system. The human drama is powerful and revealing, from the narrator's persistent battles with personal demons to his firsthand observations of a Southern lynching and the mingling of races in New York's bohemian atmosphere at the top of the turn of the century. Passing, that's another conversation. This is so, oh my gosh, this is such a phenomenal read. And you could read it in 2 hours, super quick. Okay, Black No More. I'm gonna talk fast now because I know this is getting long, but this is by George Schuyler. This is also a classic. This scathingly humorous novel establishes George Schuyler as one of the leading satirists of the 20th century. The plot revolves around the picturesque adventures of the young black protagonist, Max Disher, who, thanks to the scientific discovery of a brilliant physician, becomes white. In the burlesque of the obsession with skin color that preoccupied both blacks and whites in the United States, Schuyler creates thinly distinguished portraits of black leaders such as W.E. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey with characteristic irreverence. Um, this was a very interesting and I would say controversial read. Um, so that's all I'm going to say. If you don't know about Pudd'nhead Wilson, you need to know about Pudd'nhead Wilson. Um, I tell every adult that I know, every high schooler, you know, prepare yourself for this book. Um, this one is Pudd'nhead Wilson and those extraordinary twins. And this particular copy um, gives like a critical breakdown towards the back. I don't know where my original is. I think I borrowed it to someone. But this is definitely like, this really speaks about the black and white conversation. So you don't want to miss that. And we're down to our last two, Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. Um, I feel like this book is probably one that most people have heard of, but if you haven't read it, you owe it to yourself to do so. This was first published in 1952 and immediately hailed as a masterpiece. Invisible Man is one of those rare novels that have changed the shape of American literature. For not only does Ralph Ellison's nightmare journey across the racial divide tell unparalleled truths about the nature of bigotry and its effects on the minds of both victims and perpetrators, it gives us an entirely new model of what a novel can be. I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to give away too much. But please, please, The Invisible Man. And the last book on my shelf, um, it's not a classic. However, um, this was something that was suggested for me to read. Um, this is Keeping Faith by Cornel West. Philosophy and Race in America. And I know that, you know, Cornel West has been considered controversial. So I guess I would say um, read at your own discretion. I know that many people are opinionated when it comes to this particular author and gentleman, but you know, it's just a book, right? No one's saying that you have to be in 100% agreement, um, but it did make my list today. So this was the last book on my list. Again, I just wanted to share with you some treasures and some gems that I think can help us get to know each other a little bit better, at least start a conversation piece. Um, and if you read some or all and you decide that they weren't beneficial at all to you, okay, that's fine. But you can just say that, well, I have another 10 books under my belt. But I do hope and I pray that these will create the desire and need for really healthy conversation, um, for unity, for community, and that we can just begin to have those conversations that have not been easy to have, that have not been held for years and years and years and years, and now we're dealing with the buildup. Okay, so this is Miss B, the Griot. Thank you for sitting through this video. I know it was quite long, but it's something that I really felt was important and something that has been on my heart to do. So I wanted to be obedient and do that. Thank you for visiting my channel, Miss B the Griot. If you like this video, please click like. If you would like to see more videos and experience more stories and things of that nature, please click subscribe and do not forget to share with the world. Okay? Until next time, I'll see you in my next video. Bye.